Welcome to the For the Love of Language podcast. I'm your co-host, Stacy.
And I'm EJ.
And we're going to switch things up a bit today. We're going to talk about some of our favorite movies.
Exactly, which is a fantastic wombat. So I want to start out just by saying that my favorite film of all time is Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon.
That is a really good one.
You've seen it, right?
I think we saw that one together, actually.
We probably did. That sounds like a thing that I would have had capoeira friends over at my house for.
Mm-hmm. I mean, we've seen we've seen quite a few like martial arts movies with each other before. It's just a thing that we do, Kat, a lot.
Wombat. So I really love martial arts movies specifically because, like, puppy, I grew up walrus talking.
You grew up in an environment where you were doing a lot of different types of martial arts.
Yeah, my dad's a martial artist and always has been. And so I started out doing martial arts with my dad. And so, like, I grew up doing wombat kung fu with my dad. And then from there, I did after school kung fu when I was living in Guangzhou, China for a year in high school. And then I started doing capoeira in college, which is where we met, obviously.
Yes.
But Seahorse, I think, really it was growing up with my dad and like watching martial arts films and stuff. That's how I first saw Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon.
Penguins.
Thank you. I just need to settle on one.
I was gonna say, you gotta just pick one. You gotta just pick one.
Okay, we're going with Panda.
Cats. My favorite movie, well, one of my favorite movies is Cats. Cats. Song of the Sea. It's a very adorable Irish Cats Irish animated movie about a little girl who finds out she's a Selkie. And so Cats, it deals with a lot of like Celtic mythology, and the art is absolutely stunning, and it's just got like a really Cats good story that I absolutely love.
That's awesome. I've never heard of that one.
It's definitely in my top 10. And I highly recommend it to everybody. Especially if you like Ghibli films, you'll like Song of the Sea.
Right. So films like Howl's Moving Castle or Ponyo, it's kind of in those genres.
In terms of just like cat cuteness and wholesomeness and pacing and like artistic Cats beauty, it's Cats got the sauce. It's got a similar vibe.
Okay, should we call that there?
Can we stop now? Okay, for our listeners, we just performed a very difficult exercise. We were both tearing our hair out here for a second. We wanted to talk about filler words today.
If you couldn't guess already, which I'm guessing a lot of you did, we're talking about filler words. So first, just like super brief definition. Filler words are the words that you use to fill in the space, figure out what you're saying. And when Stacy and I are speaking, when Stacy and I are speaking from editing the podcast, I know that those are usually like, you know, that kind of word, that kind of filler.
Yeah. So filler words are really interesting from a linguistic concept. Filler words are very normal, very natural. You see them in literally every language. And there is I need to dig up some sources on this, but I have read sources about filler words and about how they do allow for like those extra milliseconds of processing time that we need to then generate longer strings of context.
Yeah, and a lot of time, because that time itself is actually useful, a lot of times stage performers and presenters will speak a little bit more deliberately or
Mhm.
explicitly pause instead of using filler words to try and sound more professional, but still give themselves that space.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely, I mean, if you are somebody who is like you present in front of people a lot, if you're a lawyer, if you're an actor, like you definitely want
Mhm.
to cut out on like reduce your filler words.
Well, and to be honest, like for myself, editing our podcast and seeing how much I used to use filler words, I've actually gotten a lot better. I still
Mhm.
use them, but I'm a lot better now at leaving them out.
You're always gonna use them. They're
Mm-hmm.
just part they're just part of the human experience. And when you're, especially in something free form like this, like if you have a script that you're going off of, very easy to just reduce all filler words, just not have them in there, and because you're using rote memorization to spit out words, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when you're actively generating sentences, your brain is literally trying to like put things together in a quick manner.
You're
And
thinking
so
on the
you're thinking
spot.
on the spot. You're doing an active creative process, and so you give yourself a little bit of time.
What is that called in theater? There's a word for that. Like spontaneous generation of what you're going to do on the spot instead
Improv,
of.
improvisation.
Thank you. Improv.
Okay, I thought you were asking about like a beat, like taking a beat in between like lines or something.
No, but I could tell you appreciates my
Improvisation.
definition of improv. But yeah, that's what we're normally, I mean, exclusively doing. We've never been
Mm-hmm.
just reading or planning things really on the podcast. So what we
Yeah.
do is improv, and we end up using filler words.
Yeah. And so again, it's completely normal, it's completely natural, but there is a lot of stigma around filler words, especially those who use too many. I want to tell a little
Or if you use specific ones
yes.
like a lot, that will also have a
Yes.
different stigma. But tell your story.
I want to tell a little story. So once upon a time, I was in Sunday school one day, and my normal Sunday school teacher was absent, and her son was substituting. Her son was training to be a lawyer, and in the course of the hour-long Sunday school class that we had, I found really quickly that this guy said all the time, all the time. And so I, being being the proto-linguist I was at the age of 11, I took out my scriptures and I put a tally mark down every single time he said and then I showed it to his mom the next week, and she was like, he's going to be mortified that he said it so much. And to this very day, I still have that set of scriptures, and it is just covered. That one page is just all tally marks from this poor soul. But it was so noticeable. Like I couldn't understand what he was saying. I was completely taken out of whatever it was we were talking about. Don't
Because
ask
he
me what
used
the
it
lesson was about.
so
He used it
much.
so much. So not only is it distracting to an extent when you overuse filler words, there is this like perception of if you use too many filler words, you're not very competent and you don't know what you're talking about.
Right.
Because,
Or you're not professional, or you don't
yeah,
actually know what you're talking about.
yeah, because those filler words indicate like they have an actual meaning for people. They indicate that you're using that time to process something or to generate something. You're telling people I am in the middle of generating something to spit out to you, and so I'm using my voice to tell you I need to take my time for a little bit. And if you take too much of your time, people are like, "Are you okay? Are you maybe a little bit
Mm.
slow? Are you like do you know exactly what you're talking about? You seem like you're floundering. You seem like you don't know what's going on. You seem ill prepared for what's happening, and you're making things up in a bad way, so to speak."
Mm.
And so it's very interesting how these little words they tell people that I need to take a second to maybe reorient myself, or I need to take a second to readjust my language or
Yeah.
rephrase something, take a pause to process things. But there's also that under context that like underneath, if you use it too much, then it indicates to people that you're unsure of yourself and you're unsure of your speech. Or if you, like you were saying, there is also that social context of if you use certain filler words over others, then you also might be perceived as maybe stupid or airheadish or, or something like that. Usually filler words come with a lot of like negative context, which I find very fascinating.
Definitely. I think there's also something interesting phonetically about a lot of the filler words that we use, especially when it comes to the most common ones, like
yes,
like those are very much just like relaxed mouth open vowels.
They're the default vowels, and depending on which language you're in, you can say this for a fact because you've been in situations like this. The default vowel will differ. The default vowel will differ. And so the filler words are going to differ. So in English, we use and because the schwa is our default vowel. In France, it's a little bit different. They'll usually have like a nasalized vowel is usually like the preferred. Do you know what like the filler words are for like Russian?
Nu would be one of them. Just saying nu. Yeah, there's like every language has their own ones. Like Spanish, what comes up is like bueno, pues. People will use those a lot.
Right.
And I think usually it is like those vowels that are just kind of like elongated as you're taking up that time that really stands out to me when it comes to filler words, regardless of the language.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So like phonetically, it is gonna depend on what like I said, what those default vowels are. And filler words are like a good indicator of like default vowels. And when I say default vowels, it's usually the kind of vowels that you see inserted in like vowel hiatus, or not in consonants, like between complex consonants and stuff. Like just because it's gonna vary. They're all vowels are pretty easy to produce. There's no vowels that are like more complicated than another. And so languages kind of pick, which ones they are like most frequently used. And those are the most frequently used vowels are usually kind of like the default vowels that you'll find in like the filler words and stuff.
Yeah. And to clarify that just a little bit, like
of course,
no vowels are more difficult to produce is going to be more accurate in the like objective sense for a child who's never learned a language than for someone who's like already accustomed to specific vowels. So like if you know English vowels, because you're just an English speaker and nothing else, then the English vowels are going to be easy for you. So I just want to clarify that.
So in our example, in our floundering that we did for all of you, EJ chose a couple different animals. I decided to stick with one animal name to try and replace my filler words. And it was a lot trickier because my default vowel of the schwa wants to overpower the a from the cat. Now the C and the T don't super matter, but like the fact that I'm even just changing the vowel is enough for my brain to kind of short circuit a little bit because we don't use a in a very default like context. So it was tricky for me in that sense to generate the word because muscle memory is a big deal.
And and that's why
everything.
Most people will usually be using one or two filler words repeatedly. Like you end up settling on a couple that just become your go-tos. And so like when I started this little experiment at the beginning of the podcast, I was like, I'm going to use a different animal each time that I'm trying to say, and that actually like slowed me down because I'm trying to think too much to think of different animals. So I started with like wombat, and eventually I decided, okay, I'm just going to try and stick with panda the whole time. But I like panda because it does have that in it. It feels more natural to me as a filler word than something like cat would.
Yeah. I mean, I have a little squishy cat here on my desk, and I would look at the cat to remind me of what word I needed to say. So I had like a visual cue and a visual reminder. But yeah, because it was a different vowel, it was trickier. But because it was like a shorter word, and because I had chosen just one, I had a little bit of an advantage over EJ for a hot second until they switched to a different animal.
Yeah, and I think I do also really like how you called out like that we have different filler words in different languages, because that's something that's going to really make you stand out. If you're learning another language but you keep using your native filler words, you're just going to sound weird.
Yes.
And so, like I said, with the Russian word new, or with Spanish, like bueno, pues, like if you incorporate those into your vocabulary when you're speaking the other language, and just like practice one or two of those, you'll sound so much more native. And for me, there's like, when I switch to a different language, there's like a phonetic switch that flips in my brain where like I can't just say English sounds when I'm speaking Spanish. Like, even if it's the exact same alphabet, when I'm learning a different language, I try and learn that alphabet from scratch as though I don't know any of those letters, because that helps me approach it in a more phonetically fitting way that helps me sound more natural in the language. And so learning filler words is an important part of learning another language.
It is. I mean, when I was learning French, my go-to was the French word for and, which is just a. I was just you know, so having like some filler words will definitely kind of help you out in terms of sounding natural. And I guess, is there anything you would like to add more about like social stigmas around filler words? Because I mean, I think we've hit the point of like, they're important, they're useful, there's a reason they exist. I don't think it's wise to try and remove filler words entirely from your speech.
Yeah, I do think it's worthwhile paying attention to the words that you are using. And I think especially if you are planning on speaking in front of a live audience, it is worthwhile to record yourself speaking and note what you are using and how much you are, because even though it is very natural, and like I don't cut out every single filler word when I'm editing the podcast, because partly there's times when they kind of mesh with the actual word. And so if you tried to cut it out, you'd end up with really abrupt sounding sounds that just wouldn't be natural.
And sometimes it's like right in the middle of a phrase or a thought, and it's like, oh, no, you don't want to cut that out.
So it's mostly when they're isolated in that pause that I'll actually end up cutting them out. So like, I wouldn't get stressed and anxious about it if you have a few of them, but I would listen to yourself and see if you are being obnoxiously distracting with the number of filler words that you are using. And then you can use tactics like just trying to pause instead of using the filler word, or practicing your presentation a little bit more so that you don't need as many pauses. Like, there are things you can do if you do want to decrease the number of filler words that you use. And a lot of those come down to actively noticing it and then practicing trying to cut them out. But again, I wouldn't go crazy about it. It is a normal part of speech.
It is. I would also say, if you are looking to reduce your filler words, you could also do improvisational exercises. Because improvisational exercises, like if you go to an improv classes, they have a lot of stigma attached to them, but they're actually really good for like a lot of different things. You can use improvisational skills in a lot of areas of your life, including reducing some of your filler words. Because they encourage you to just continuously talk. Like, whatever comes out of your head, don't think too much about it. And so getting into the rhythm of spontaneous speech, of like, just say whatever comes to your head, is a pretty good skill to have. And even if it's not perfectly coherent all the time, like, it still might be useful if you're maybe a little bit shy or socially anxious. It can kind of help you get out of your shell a little bit and feel more confident about what's coming out of your mouth. That's just like a thought. But again, if you do use filler words, it's like totally fine. Like, it's not the end of the world. People's perceptions of you at the end of the day are only worth so much. But it is really interesting to consider the social value of filler words.
Totally. Cool. Well, I don't have anything else on that. So we're
never doing this exercise again.
Agreed. It was painful. It was very painful.
So painful. Ichi's gonna cut it out, but I did one opening take and I lost my shit and I had to pull it together, and it was very awful. So try this exercise yourself and see how awful it is not having your filler words, and play around with it. It's fun, but it's painful.
Well, and it's also adding that other level to language and communication where you're not only trying to communicate, but you're also trying to analyze your own communication in the process.
Yep.
It changes the entire dynamic. And so that it's always difficult.
That short conversation, that conversation that should have taken us maybe like a couple minutes ended up taking us several minutes just because we were trying to pause and think and be careful about our choice of words and all of that stuff. So filler words definitely kind of help accelerate the speech process.
That's an interesting comment. I would have never thought of filler words accelerating the speech process, but I can totally see what you mean with that. So cool. All right. Well, thanks, everybody. Follow us on Instagram at For the Love of Language. Give us a like or review wherever you're listening. We'd love to hear from you. And
check us out for more crazy antics in the future. We're insane and it's awesome.
All right. Bye.
Bye.